My novel study, I chose One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. So the storyline of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it takes place in a psychiatric hospital in the early 1960s. What happens is a new patient is brought into the psychiatric ward, and they start to create this whole disturbance of the regular daily routine life in the ward. So what happens and how the disturbance is created is the patient and the head nurse butt heads a lot, and they kind of go back and forth with this whole argumentative attitude. And this book gives an insight into the cruel treatment of the psychiatric patients in the ward in 1960. Why One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is an important novel. So this is an important novel because it describes the unjust treatment of the patients. The patients were manipulated by the head nurse and some of the staff. The patient's best interest was not the main focus. The main focus was to get the patients to be kind of like the ideal normal citizen, just to have them be very subdued, very rule-abiding, and they did that by any way. They didn't really focus on getting the patient's mental health in order. They focused on just making them seem normal, and they often did that by shock therapy, multiple rounds of shock therapy. So this is another reason why the treatment was unjust. It was shock therapy was used more than not, and it often left the patients kind of as a shell of themselves because the repeated shock therapy really took a toll on them. They were also fed tranquilizers and medications of which the patients did not know the contents. So in one scene in the book, one of the patients is asking one of the nurses, what is in this medication I'm being fed? What does it do? And she would not answer. So they do not know what they are being fed, what they are ingesting. It is also important because it sheds light onto the broken system in which the patients were being taken advantage of by those who were kind of in charge of them, by the head nurse and the other nurses and the people in charge of the nurses. So this whole system was just manipulating and taking advantage of the patients. And another thing is that the patients, again, their mental health was not in the best interest. They were simply there to kind of form them into the normal rule-abiding citizen. This book is a classic. So this book is a classic because it talks about mental health and mental health issues in a time where this topic was widely regarded as taboo. It was not really talked about. It was kind of stayed away from. It was kind of scary to talk about. So Ken Kesey really started to bring up the conversation about mental health and brought it into the light in novel studies and talked about the treatment of patients in the 1960s. He also broke the boundaries when talking about mental health. And finally, to whom I'd recommend this book. This book is for the insensitive, as it constantly talks about the unfair treatment towards the patients. The patients were often subjected to lots of repeated shock therapy, and they also had lobotomies performed on them. Patients were manipulated, overly controlled, as well as victim blamed. And those interested in exploring the minds of the mentally ill would be very interested in this book. It would be a good book for them. And also those who are interested in the difference of the mental health treatment in the 1960s and today. This book is for also fairly skilled readers, as it can be an easy read because the patients, when they are talking, they don't have a very broad vocabulary, but some of the staff members do have a broad vocabulary, and they also talk about many terms that people may not be familiar with, and medications and things along those lines.